friends, and welcome to my channel. My name is Ryan Abair, and this is where I share my insights. And today I'm wondering, how far can we go without? It seems like life keeps pushing us closer and closer to a boundary that keeps proving itself to be an infinite curve. And I often wonder to myself, how much closer can I get without actually falling off? Am I going on fumes, a wing, and a prayer, or nothing at all? Let's talk about what it might be like to go on forever without a thing. Stick around. There's a really funny Seinfeld episode where Kramer test drives a new car. And he's driving around with the salesman, and they notice that the needle on the gas tank is hovering just above empty, or it might actually be on empty. And Kramer gets this wild idea to just see how far they can go before the car is kaput. And I think there is some humor in this metaphysical parallel in life. It's like, how far can life push you before you realize there is no you to be pushed? And this is what I want to talk to you today about, is how dependent we are, seemingly, on things that we feel are supporting us, making us feel real, making us feel as though we have some kind of autonomous power and freedom. That is, until life seems to slowly take those things away from you, and that's part of aging. Part of aging is realizing you're falling apart physically. And that scares people. It scares people to think that they're losing their faculties. You might even lose your memory. But I say, in that loss is an amazing opportunity to gain perspective into who you really are. You see, the separate self depends on past and future to keep it alive. To think that you have some kind of continuity from one moment to the next as a real thing is nothing but an apparition of your imagination that depends on your memory and your ability to project yourself into the so-called future. You see, the future has to be kept alive by a thought. When you disappear into your activities and you become immersed so deeply in an activity, the scary future dies, you see. And we're afraid to allow the future to die. We have to keep it alive. We have to keep our appointments alive, and our bills and our coming looming deadlines. We have to keep those alive. But at some point, they become impossible to be kept alive because it hurts. It creates pain and suffering. In the same way that the memories is important to keep the separate self alive, but we all know the memory is unreliable and the past changes. The brain changes the past. So anything that changes is not real. The future changes. Ooh, it might be, and it might be, and it might be. And the past changes. But reality, which is something very difficult to explain, never changes. It's the illusion of the separate self, that continuity that is strung together from moment to moment, that is kept alive by memory and projection into the future. I've shared this story before, but my grandmother quit smoking by putting her cigarettes. This was years ago, before I was born. She told me this story. She put her cigarettes in a cookie jar. Now you see, the addiction was an urge in her. She had to take a smoke. It had to come to her. She had to feel it. So the separate self is a feeling. It's an addiction, you see. Like a drag on a cigarette. I have to have this. But you know what she did? She put her cigarette in a cookie jar. And she told herself, I can wait 5 minutes before I need a puff. So the so-called urgency died down. The immediacy of it, the need for it, went. We might consider that killing it, not suppressing it. It just cleared for a second. She knew something about herself that she could wait 5 minutes. And so the addiction, which felt real, became wishy-washy. And so for 5 minutes, the addiction didn't have a power over her. She exhibited something over the addictive properties of keeping the need for a cigarette alive. That's what you call awakening. She transcended it. See, the body was craving it, you see. That's a physical urge, which is probably illusory too. The mind has to keep that alive. But if there's a little pause, you kill it. It goes from this urgency to a for 5 minutes. And she learned something in that little space, that if she could kill the addiction for 5 minutes, she could kill it for good. She realized there's no difference between 5 minutes and eternity. And there is no difference between need and want. So eternity is this inching closer to fear until you get so used to it. You realize that what you fear is you. What you fear is that you might die. And you will die. You will die to the physical, the temporary. And you will be introduced to the ongoing nature of your truth, which is proven by this on-off phenomenon of the separate self. If I keep the future and the past alive, then I have something to identify with. I have a real entity. But you get tired of keeping that alive. That is not really aliveness. That is something that is too hard to keep up. It's too hard to keep up the appearance of future and past. The best thing that can happen to you is the loss of your memory. And the loss of a projection of tomorrow. That's the best thing that can happen to you, is the death of this seeming continuity that lives from now until later. It's when you can kiss tomorrow goodbye that you will begin to live for real. When the past and future are too hard to keep up anymore. But you have to show yourself that you can do without. See, you are doing without. You are being done. The separate self really has no control. You know that. Something is awakening, and it is the same thing that is asleep or unconscious. The spiritually minded person knows no difference. And that the sanctity and the purity of the present moment will not be defiled by a thought. So there is this sensation that you are running on nothing. You're crossing miles and miles and miles of territory on fumes. And I wouldn't even say you have fumes. You are supplied by your own power. Your ongoing infinite nothingness. Whereby the separate self is too hard to keep up anymore. It's hard to keep the future up here unless it's constantly reminding. It's hard to keep the past up here unless it's constantly bothering. But imagine all of that just for 5 minutes before you need to take another puff on yourself and blow. It's like a cigarette. You have to suck in on it and it gets it hot. And that's who you are, a hothead. But what if you never light the cigarette in the first place? Keep up the self. You see, we believe ourselves to be these entities that we can see from the outside. What does this look like on the outside? How do I look on the outside? How am I perceived on the outside? Well, let me do this and this and this and this to improve my appearance. There's a wonderful show called Keeping Up Appearances, and she tries so hard to appear like a social elite. It's comic. What are you trying hard to appear as? Someone who's going to live in this body forever? Or have you outgrown this idea of keeping up an appearance? The future is an addiction, the past is an addiction, and the separate self is an addiction. It just, becomes flaccid. And when there's a little clearing, there's no need. Now, I have no need. Now, I have no identity. Now, I'm nothing. Tomorrow, I got a lot of stuff. Yesterday, I did, man. Past and future. Wiped clean. Disappear. Gone. I am without. The people who need a Savior are sitting in a church pew waiting. Sorry if you're religious, but no one ever seems to be able to graduate, to get this spiritual freedom that they are extolling the virtues of, because you got to go back every week and confess and say, I'm sorry, and beat your chest. I'm so sorry. That's dredging up the past every single time. And hoping one day you'll be set free. That is, until you realize that that which is sitting in the pew is the Savior of the world, the Redeemer, disguised as someone who needs a Savior. Physician, heal thyself. Sinner, save thyself. Human, redeem thyself. If the hero is bestowed upon one individual, then the universe plays favorites. Then we are locked into a caste system. I don't believe that. I believe we can do without. Without need for a hero. Without need for a savior. Without anything. Because this is world without end, and I am without end. And guess what? Everything and everyone else is too. Go ahead and get closer to the so-called boundary, and you know what you're going to find? Infinity. Yourself. As it was in the beginning, is now, and will be forever. That's what you're going to find. And the thing you thought you needed, the hero you thought you were looking for, is somehow incarnated in a body that looks at itself in a mirror and wonders, who am I? Go on. You can do without. My name is Ryan Hebert. I hope that you'll check out my blog. It's called MyMorningMotivator.com. And thank you for listening to my insights today.